The first time Logan Pierce heard the warning, it came in the form of a muttered sentence over a box of groceries. "You bought the place on Willow Creek, right?" said Walter Briggs, the wiry old delivery man with the knotted knuckles and a permanent smell of tobacco. "Number 17. Logan nodded as he signed for the package. Walter's eyes narrowed. "House like that's got bones. Funny history, too. Someone went missing back in the early 2000s. Never did find her. Paperwork got real tidy after that, though." He didn't say more. Just handed over the box and drove off, leaving Logan standing in the gravel driveway with a half smile and a flicker of unease. He brushed it off. People in small towns love to gossip, especially about old homes, and 17 Willow Creek Lane was certainly that. A weathered farmhouse with sun-bleached siding, a leaning porch, and creaky floors that sang at night. A fixer-upper, sure, but Logan had seen potential. He was a builder by trade. If anyone could bring this place back to life, it was him. Inside, the scent of varnish and lingering drywall dust still hung in the air. Emily had left earlier for her shift at the elementary school, and 5-year-old Zoe was curled up on the living room rug, drawing with her legs tucked beneath her like a little frog. Nearby, their German shepherd, Ranger, lay with his head on his paws, eyes half-lidded but watching everything. The dog had been a rescue, adopted from a shelter in upstate New York 6 months ago. Strong, quiet, unusually alert. He'd bonded with Zoe like a second shadow. Wherever she went, he followed. Logan had joked once that they'd bought a bodyguard, not a pet, but lately Ranger's behavior had shifted from protective to obsessive. It started with him sleeping in front of the basement door, not lounging, guarding. Then came the pacing, the refusal to eat unless that door was latched, and twice, just in the past week, he'd growled low when Zoe got too close to the steps. That morning, Logan found him there again, sitting rigid, ears up, staring at the base of the door as if he could see through it. "Ranger," Logan said softly. "What's down there, buddy?" The dog didn't blink. That afternoon, Logan climbed up to the narrow crawl space tucked behind the upstairs linen closet. He wasn't looking for anything, just organizing old insulation and checking for rodents, but his hand brushed something shoved deep into the rafters. A folder, thick with yellowed papers and old blueprints, edges curling like old leaves. Inside, he found hand-drawn sketches of the house layout. But something felt wrong. Rooms were marked, then crossed out. A square on the basement wall was scribbled over in thick pencil lines, and at the bottom, a name scrawled in jerky handwriting. C. Hale. Curtis Hale, the previous owner. Logan remembered the name from the property records. He flipped through the pages. Every renovation note had corrections, arrows, redacted lines. Nothing was finished, and none of it had been submitted for permits. A chill crept up his spine. By the time Emily got home, the sun had dropped behind the hills, casting long orange slats through the dusty windows. Zoe was on the couch, watching a kid's video on her tablet. "Hey, babe," Emily called from the kitchen. "Did you hear back from the plumber yet?" "Not yet," Logan said distractedly, still staring at the folder in his lap. "Logan?" "Sorry." He looked up. "I found some old drawings. Stuff from the guy who flipped this house before we bought it. It's weird. Looks like he covered something up in the basement." Emily walked over, brow furrowed. "What kind of something?" He handed her the blueprints. "I don't know yet." That's when it happened. From the living room, a loud whoop whoop echoed. A fire alarm sound effect in the video Zoe was watching. Harmless. Silly. But in an instant, Ranger shot up like a soldier hearing a war drum. His body went rigid. He took 2 steps forward, ears straight up, and dropped flat to the ground. Front paws out, tail stiff, eyes locked on Zoe. Then he let out a sound neither of them had ever heard before. A low, guttural hum. Not a growl, not a whimper, something in between. Zoe froze, eyes wide. "Daddy, Ranger's being weird again." Emily knelt beside the dog slowly. "Hey, easy boy, it's just a video." But Ranger didn't move. His eyes flicked toward the basement door again. "What if he's been trained?" Emily whispered. Logan glanced over. "Trained how?" "You know, K-9 units, military, police." She looked up. "That reaction? That's tactical. It's like he got activated." "Activated by a kid's cartoon?" "No, by that alarm sound. I read somewhere some dogs retain old commands, even if they've been out of service for years." Logan didn't answer, but something deep in his chest tightened. That night, after Zoe had gone to bed, Logan stood in front of the basement door with a cup of black coffee. The house was silent except for the occasional creak of the old beams settling into night. Ranger sat beside him, ears twitching. He turned the knob gently. Nothing. He pressed his hand to the surface. The wood felt cool. But the air coming from the bottom seam, it wasn't right. There was a faint scent there, sweet, chemical, like paint thinner or varnish, but they hadn't used any solvents in weeks. He closed the door again. Behind him, Ranger stood guard. It was just past midnight when Logan woke to the sound of nails on hardwood. Click, click, click. Not frantic, just pacing. Measured. Logan blinked into the darkness. "Ranger?" he whispered. Emily stirred beside him. "What's he doing?" Logan sat up. The dog was standing at the bedroom door, staring down the hall. Logan's skin prickled. He got up, grabbed his phone flashlight, and crept into the hallway. The boards creaked beneath his bare feet. Ranger followed silently. At the basement door, the air was colder. The smell was back. Stronger now. Logan reached out and touched the doorknob. It was warm. "Tomorrow," he said aloud. "We're opening it, but you and Zoe go visit your mom, just in case." Ranger lay down in front of the door again, eyes unblinking, and stayed there until dawn. By sunrise, Logan was already dressed, sipping lukewarm coffee as he stood by the porch. His boots were caked with dried mud from yesterday's gutter repairs, but he didn't bother changing them. His eyes kept drifting to the basement door. Inside, Ranger hadn't moved an inch. The German shepherd lay like a stone statue, eyes open, ears up. Emily noticed it first. "He didn't eat last night," she said, crouching beside him. "Didn't even sniff his bowl this morning." Logan knelt down and ran a hand over the dog's back. The fur was taut, muscles wound tight. He wasn't sleeping, he was waiting. "Hey," Emily said gently, resting her palm on Logan's arm. "Why don't Zoe and I head out early? I'll take her to Mom's for the weekend. You focus on whatever this is." Logan gave a small nod. "Yeah, just to be safe." Zoe hugged Ranger before they left, wrapping her little arms around his broad neck. "Be good, okay? Watch Daddy." Ranger didn't wag, didn't blink, just pressed his nose gently to her hand. As the SUV pulled away down the gravel drive, Logan stood with his hand resting on the doorknob, a wrench in his back pocket, and a utility flashlight clipped to his belt. Ranger was already there, head tilted toward the faint seam at the bottom of the basement door. "Let's find out what's got you so worked up," Logan muttered. But just as his fingers curled around the knob, something pulled him back. Instead, he turned, walked to the dining table, opened his laptop and typed, "K-9, gas detection, training behaviors." A dozen results popped up. Common signs: refusal to leave area, intense fixation, refusal to eat, lying down near suspected zone, whining or barking at closed areas. He scrolled further, then clicked on a video. It showed a handler giving commands in German, Sitz, Platz, here. As the shepherd moved in perfect unison, Logan turned his head. Sitz, he said aloud. Ranger sat immediately. Platz. Ranger laid flat, tail still. Holy hell, Logan whispered. You were trained. Later that day, as the afternoon sun dipped into orange, Logan crouched by the HVAC vent in the hallway, half an excuse to check the airflow, half a distraction from his nerves. That's when Zoe's voice crackled through the speakerphone. Daddy? He smiled. Hey, sweetheart. You having fun at Grandma's? Yeah, we made muffins. Save me one, okay? There was a pause. Daddy. Yeah? Her voice dropped to a whisper. Ranger told me not to go to the basement. Logan sat upright, heart skipping. Sweetie, what do you mean? I saw him in my dream. There was a man down there. He couldn't breathe. Ranger said to stay away. Logan swallowed hard. You mean, like, he barked? Number? He talked. By twilight, Logan stood at the basement door again, flashlight in hand, heart thudding behind his ribs. Okay, buddy, he whispered to Ranger. We go slow. He opened the door. The wooden stairs groaned under his weight. Ranger followed, one step at a time, tail low but steady. At the bottom, the cold hit him first, a dense, cloying air that didn't belong in a sealed basement. His light scanned across stacks of boxes, an old treadmill, dumbbells they hadn't touched in years. Nothing looked out of place, but something felt wrong. Ranger moved past him, nose twitching, and lay down beside a section of the far wall, just under the water heater. Logan stepped closer. The air smelled sweet, too sweet, like glue or thinner. He crouched and put a hand on the drywall. Warm. He rapped his knuckles against it. Thud. Thud. Hollow. Damn it. He sprinted back upstairs and grabbed his toolbox. Within minutes, he had scored a small square out of the drywall. As he pulled it loose, a sickly, chemical odor rushed into his face. He coughed, gagged. Behind the wall, a cracked gas line, patched hastily with duct tape. One corner of the joint had split open. He stumbled back, fumbled for his phone, and called the emergency gas line. This is urgent, he said, choking down the fumes. I've got a leak, possibly long-term. 30 minutes later, 2 technicians in full safety gear stepped down into the basement. Logan watched from the top of the stairs, light-headed and pale, as one of them examined the pipe. You're lucky, one of the men said through his mask. Real lucky. Logan looked confused. Why? This isn't a small leak. That pipe's been bleeding methane for weeks, maybe longer. One spark, light switch, static electricity. He didn't finish the sentence. Logan sat on the steps, staring at his hands. Ranger pressed against his knee, warm and solid. How did you know? One tech asked. I didn't, Logan murmured, looking down at the dog. He did. That night, Logan and Ranger sat on the porch in silence. The air was cool, the stars just starting to pierce the sky. Emily texted that Zoe was asleep, safe and sound. Logan stared at the dark outline of the house. I was going to blame you, he whispered. A week ago, when Zoe almost tripped on the stairs, I thought maybe you'd pushed her. Maybe you weren't safe. Ranger looked up at him. I was wrong, Logan said. You weren't protecting the stairs. You were protecting her. The shepherd laid his head in Logan's lap. For the first time in weeks, his body relaxed. Logan sat back, his hand resting gently on the dog's shoulder, and for the first time since they moved in, allowed himself to feel fear, not because of what might happen, but because of how close it had already come. Logan didn't sleep that night. Even with the gas leak fixed, the air in the house still felt wrong. Thicker somehow, like it was holding its breath. Ranger had resumed his post by the basement door, no longer rigid with tension, but still alert. Something about the dog's gaze made Logan feel like the danger hadn't passed, only shifted. The next morning, while Emily and Zoe were still at her mother's, Logan pulled on his tool belt and went back down. The basement was quiet, save for the distant hum of the water heater and the occasional creak of the old beams overhead. His flashlight beam swept across the concrete floor, settling on the section of a wall Ranger had been fixated on before. He crouched beside it. Now that he was paying attention, it was obvious. This section of drywall was newer, smoother texture, cleaner seams. Logan tapped it again. Hollow. He ran his stud finder across it, and the readings didn't match the rest of the room. Studs were spaced too far apart. No insulation detected. "Someone built this in a hurry," he muttered. He cut a square cleanly into the wall and peeled back the panel. What he saw behind it made him step back and curse. It wasn't the foundation, it was a void. A narrow crawl space, maybe 8 feet across, framed in crude wooden beams and encased by rough stone. Logan slid his flashlight inside. Dust floated in thick, slow motion. The floor was dirt, uneven, damp. A folding chair sat in the corner. An old mattress, stained dark at one end, lay crumpled beside it. On top of a plastic crate rested a stack of 4 notebooks. His stomach tightened. He knocked out more drywall until he could crawl through. Ranger didn't follow, but let out a quiet, urgent whine behind him. The air inside was still and cold. He knelt beside the notebooks and flipped one open. The handwriting was jagged, manic, covering every line. On the first page was a rough sketch of the house's floor plan, labeled with times. Emily leaves 7:55 a.m. Zoe watches TV 8:10 a.m. Logan, home from job site 6:35 p.m. Logan's hand trembled. Another page was filled with drawings of Zoe, childish, eerily accurate. Her hair in pigtails, her favorite yellow dress. A note underneath. She's alone for 7 minutes between 3:43 and 3:50. He felt bile rising in his throat. Then he saw it. In the dirt beside the mattress, half buried, was a small plastic bracelet, pink and glittery. One of those snap-on kind Zoe had loved when they first moved in. She'd cried for hours when it went missing. Logan picked it up with shaking fingers. That's when Ranger growled. Low, sharp. Logan turned. The dog was staring at the door that led deeper into the basement, tail raised slightly. As Logan stepped out of the crawl space, he saw it. A faint seam in the concrete wall near the back corner. A hidden door frame, cleverly covered with drywall and paint. He approached, running his fingers along the edge. That's when he noticed something else. A thin piece of fishing line, stretched taut between the doorknob and the frame. Connected to it, wedged just behind the paneling, were shards of broken glass rigged to fall inward if the door were opened too forcefully. A crude alarm. Son of a... Before he could act, Ranger stepped forward, nose twitching, and then, delicately, precisely, pressed his snout under the line and nudged it upward, just enough for Logan to slide 2 fingers in and snip the string with his utility knife. The glass didn't fall. Logan exhaled slowly. Good boy. He carefully pulled open the false wall. Behind it was a second narrow door, metal this time, with a newer lock bolted at the base. He didn't try it. Instead, he backed away and sat on the bottom stair, heart racing. Someone had built this. Recently, someone had been here, watching them, tracking them. And from the looks of the wiring, the camera in the crawl space, even if it was burned out, they had recorded something. Logan stood and bolted upstairs. He called the sheriff's department, and within 40 minutes, Deputy Riley Monroe, pulled up in a dusty SUV. She was in her late 30s, sharp-eyed, and not easily rattled. But even she paused when Logan showed her the room. "Jesus," she murmured, shining her flashlight into the crawlspace. "You sure you've never been in here before?" "Positive. That wall wasn't original. I do renovation work. I would have known." She stepped inside, snapped photos, bagged the bracelet in an evidence pouch, and examined the notebooks. "This is more than trespassing," she said. "Much more." Logan nodded grimly. "You think this is Curtis Hale's work?" Riley frowned. "I don't know. The man was shady as hell. Cut corners on every property he touched. Never pulled permits. Wouldn't let inspectors near his plumbing. But this," she gestured to the camera, "this is another level." Then she crouched in the corner where the mattress had sat and ran her hand through the dirt. Her fingers tapped something hard. A trapdoor. She brushed more dirt aside until the outline became clear. Wooden panel, cleanly cut, newer than the floor around it. A modern padlock gleamed at one edge. "You've got to be kidding me," she whispered. Logan stepped closer. "I need to know what's down there." "Not yet," she said. "We'll bring in a forensics team tonight." Logan clenched his fists. Whoever did this, they were preparing for something. "I know." Ranger growled again, ears pinned forward, tail stiff as iron. Logan looked at him. "What are you trying to tell me, boy?" The dog didn't answer, just fixed his gaze on the locked panel, unmoving. And Logan, for the first time in his life, felt real fear, not just for what had been done, but for what was still waiting to be found. Rain hammered the roof like war drums. Logan stood in the kitchen with the phone pressed to his ear, watching the basement door. Ranger hadn't moved from his guard post in hours, body tense, ears twitching at every creak of the house. The forensic team had come and gone, but they hadn't opened the trap door. They'd marked it, photographed it, promised follow-up. But it wasn't fast enough. Something about the storm made Logan uneasy, like the house was bracing for something. The voicemail beeped. "Riley, it's Logan. That storm's getting worse. I don't think we can wait. I'm going down." He ended the call. Ranger was already standing, tail stiff, watching him. Logan grabbed the crowbar from the garage and descended into the basement. The light bulb flickered. Water leaked down the concrete in thin silver lines. The trapdoor gleamed, almost daring him. He wedged the crowbar beneath the padlock. 2 hard jerks, crack, and it gave. The hinges groaned. Beneath the trapdoor was a steep wooden staircase. Darkness swallowed the bottom. Logan clicked on his flashlight and started down. Ranger followed, silent and sure-footed. The air grew colder, heavier, almost wet. The stairs ended at a dirt corridor lined with rotting boards and rusted nails. At the end, a metal cage door, half open. "Hello?" Logan called. His voice echoed, hollow. Silence. Then, a whisper. So faint he thought he imagined it. "Help!" He ran. The room beyond the gate was a crude bunker. A cot, a bucket, an old lantern, and curled in the corner, a girl. Thin, bruised, shackled by one ankle to a pipe. She flinched as the light hit her face. Hey, it's okay," Logan said, dropping to his knees. "I'm not here to hurt you. My name's Logan." She blinked rapidly. Her lips cracked as she whispered, "Jessica." Jessica Lane. The name hit him like a truck. She'd been on the missing persons board at the sheriff's station. Gone for 3 months. No leads. Emily had even mentioned her once. That college girl who vanished. He gently pulled at the shackle. Rusted tight. "We're getting you out of here." "No," she gasped. "He's coming back. He said he always comes back when it rains." Logan's spine turned to ice. He fumbled with his multi-tool, trying to pry the bolt open. Ranger stayed by the door, growling low. Jessica's voice cracked again. He pretended to be a landlord, posted an ad, said he needed someone to clean up the place. I needed the money. He was normal at first. Logan gritted his teeth. The bolt gave way with a snap, and he caught her as she slumped into his arms. She was barely conscious. "We're getting out of here," he said. But Ranger's growl deepened, a sound Logan had only heard once before, the day of the gas leak. Then they heard it. Footsteps, upstairs, slow, deliberate, wet boots on wood. Ranger bolted up the stairs before Logan could stop him. Logan scooped Jessica into his arms and followed, heart pounding, flashlight beam jerking with each step. The basement door slammed shut above them. And then, a voice, unmistakable. "I told you to stop digging." Curtis Hale. Logan's blood froze. He set Jessica down on the steps. "Don't move." Curtis's voice drifted closer. "You know, I really liked this house before you tore it all apart." Thunder cracked overhead. "You have a beautiful daughter, Logan. She looks just like her mother." Logan surged forward, but Ranger was faster. With a snarl, the dog lunged through the basement door as it cracked open. A muffled shout followed, then a gunshot. "Ranger!" Logan burst through, tackled Curtis into the living room. The gun slid across the floor. Curtis was soaked, hair plastered to his face, eyes wild. "You ruined it!" he spat. "She wasn't supposed to—" Logan drove a fist into his jaw. Curtis laughed, blood in his teeth. "You think you saved her? There's always another one. Always another house." But then, flashing lights painted the walls blue and red. Deputy Riley kicked the door open with 2 officers behind her. "Hands in the air now." Curtis didn't resist. As they cuffed him, Logan crawled to Ranger, who lay by the window, breathing hard. The bullet had grazed his side. Blood seeped through his fur, but he was conscious, tail thumping weakly as Logan pressed his forehead to his. "You did good, boy," he whispered. "You did real good." Outside, Jessica was wrapped in blankets and lifted into the ambulance. She clutched Logan's hand before they wheeled her in. "Thank you. I didn't think anyone would find me." He squeezed her hand gently. "Ranger did?" Later, when the storm passed and the house stood quiet again, Logan sat with Ranger on the porch, both wrapped in silence. And for the first time since they'd moved in, the house felt still, like it was breathing again. But Logan knew it wasn't over. Because monsters like Curtis didn't build cages for just one person. They planned. They watched. And somewhere in Zoe's room, a pink bracelet lay gleaming on the dresser, a reminder that they'd come terrifyingly close to losing everything. The mornings were different now. The house stood quiet, but no longer threatening, just tired, like a place trying to forget its past. The basement door had been sealed, the hidden room beneath it bricked off under Sheriff Riley's supervision. The smell of solvents was gone, replaced with fresh pine and coffee. But Logan still woke up sometimes to Ranger's empty spot by the bedroom door, expecting to see that watchful silhouette in the dim light. Ranger had healed from the gunshot. Not quickly, not cleanly, but he was walking again, eating again, though his steps were slower, his breaths more shallow. He'd grown old all at once, like everything he'd carried finally weighed him down. Logan sat on the porch beside him most evenings, a blanket draped across his shoulders, a cup of lukewarm tea in his hands. Zoe and Emily were away for the week, taking a short trip to the coast. He'd insisted they go. Zoe needed joy. Emily needed air, and he needed time alone with Ranger. He reached into a cardboard box of things from the shelter that had rescued Ranger. Old files, tattered paperwork. At the very bottom he found it. A training certificate, barely legible. A stamped phrase in bold black, loyal under fire, responsive under loss. Underneath, handler, unknown. Unit, decommissioned. Logan swallowed, his throat tightened. He remembered now the day Zoe had nearly fallen down the stairs, just months after they brought Ranger home. She'd tripped on her shoelaces and Ranger had lunged, barking, knocking her backward. Emily had screamed. Logan had yelled, pulled the dog away by the collar, locked him in the laundry room for hours. But later that night, when he reviewed the home security camera, he saw the truth. Ranger hadn't pushed Zoe. He'd pulled her away from the broken step. He'd saved her. And Logan had punished him for it. Tears blurred his vision. He looked down at the shepherd lying at his feet, head resting on his paws, eyes watching the horizon. "I'm sorry," Logan whispered. "I should have trusted you then. I should have known." That night, he turned off all the lights, lit the fireplace, and played old videos of Zoe. Ranger didn't move at first, but when her voice echoed through the speakers, small and bright, from a birthday 2 years ago, Ranger's ears twitched. She was laughing. Off camera, she called, "Come here, Ranger. You're the best boy." Ranger lifted his head. Logan watched his tail twitch once, then twice. He played another clip, then another. By midnight, Ranger had crawled onto the rug in front of the fire and rested his chin on Logan's knee. They stayed like that until dawn. In the days that followed, Ranger grew stronger, not physically, but present again. He started following Logan on short walks. One morning, Riley showed up with a certificate. "He's officially certified now," she said, handing it over with a grin. "Community search and rescue dog. He's earned it." A week later, they were called out to assist. A 10-year-old boy named Micah had gone missing in the woods beyond Pine Hollow. Nonverbal autism, last seen walking toward the tree line with his sketchpad. Logan hesitated at first, but Ranger stood by the truck, tail up, eyes sharp. Ready. They searched for hours, daylight bleeding into dusk. But it was Ranger who found him, huddled under a fallen pine, shivering, holding a crumpled drawing of a blue dog with wings. Micah didn't speak, but when Ranger approached, he reached out and buried his fingers in the shepherd's fur and didn't let go. When they got home, Logan tucked Ranger into his bed on the porch, wrapped him in his favorite fleece blanket, and sat beside him in the golden evening light. Ranger didn't eat the next day, or the next. On the third morning, Logan found him watching the sunrise, his breathing slow, steady. Logan sat beside him and said nothing. When the sun crested the ridge, Ranger let out one soft breath, and didn't take another. The funeral was small, just family, close friends, Sheriff Riley, and 2 officers from the K-9 unit who'd never met Ranger but came anyway. Zoe spoke last, standing bravely in front of the carved wooden box under the oak tree. She held a drawing in her hand. "He never let the darkness win," she said, voice clear. "Not even once." A month passed. One cool morning, just as Logan was pouring his second cup of coffee, the doorbell rang. A woman stood there, early 30s, eyes tired but kind. In her arms was a puppy, gangly and wide-eyed, fur a soft gray-brown. "Sorry to show up like this," she said. "I found this guy behind the diner out near Route 6. No tags, no chip. They said you might know what to do." Logan looked down. The pup tilted its head, one floppy ear half raising. German Shepherd. The woman placed a note in Logan's hand before she left, scrawled in black ink, "From one guardian to the next." That night, Zoe drew a picture. The 3 of them standing under the sun, Logan, Emily, and her hand in hand. Ranger sat beside them, and just in the corner, a new puppy, ears too big for his head, tail curled like a question mark. A new beginning, a new watch at the door, and always, always, a memory that stayed loyal under fire.